Howdy, y'all. It's Mike, the He of Carnomad, and tonight I have a treat for you. My friend Josh Blackburn of Twitter has adopted a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, and he's gonna do a PKD mukbang with us this evening. Josh, say hello to the audience.
Hello.
All right, so you are sitting there, I think, with a plate of your PKD food
I
ready. Is that
am.
right?
Yes. Yep.
All right,
Yep.
so can you talk to us? Like, identify. I know you're hungry and you've been waiting to eat for this video, so we're going to get right into it. But before you dig in, could you just sort of show us what's on the plate
Sure.
and review the relevance of various PKD parameters to what's on your plate?
Sure. Absolutely. So PKD is the protocol that I've seen from the Institute of, or the International Center of Medical Nutritional Intervention, right? ICM.
Better known as
Yeah.
Paleo Medicina a few months
Much
ago,
easier to
right?
say. So it's basically trying to keep a 2-to-1 fat to protein macronutrient by weight, and usually that means incorporating a little extra fat. Normally, what I like to do is eat a little bit of suet or just really fatty cuts to kind of help with that. But generally, from what I've seen from their protocol, and I'm not personally advocating for that. Like, if somebody needs a nutritional intervention, they should definitely consider consulting with them. But this is kind of just what I'm doing, and what I've seen from them is
Right.
the basis of the diet should be land mammals. It should be pork. It should be lamb. It should be beef. There's no poultry on the protocol. There's I believe very little fish. There's no dairy, and for the most part, I think they use pork in Hungary.
Right, and just as an aside here, it seems like pork is just more available in Hungary. It's not like they're
Right,
trying to
right,
emphasize monogastrics over ruminants or something like that.
right. I personally do better with beef. Conventional pork, for the most part, doesn't sit right with me. I like pastured pork, but still, I still want beef.
Okay.
So yeah. So what I got here today is I actually have some brisket. This is brisket fat. So this is leftover brisket, untrimmed brisket, which Costco sells, easily gets you over that 2-to-1. Like, I'm trimming off tons of fat from that brisket.
Really?
And
That's
yeah,
easy then.
yeah, it's probably like 5-to-1 or 6-to-1, to be honest. It's like bacon. Even though the brisket's cut from like the breast area of the cow, and it's
Right.
not the belly, it is fatty.
Nice.
But it's cheap. So if you're more of a frugalvore like I am, $3 a pound, tons of brisket.
Frugivore is
So
speaking
yeah,
my
so
language.
I've also got some frozen liver in here. I'm the weird one that likes to eat my liver frozen.
Right?
This is calf liver. This is from Walmart. Another frugivore thing. It's very cheap. Usually like $3.50. I would say their packs are labeled as 1 pound. They're typically about half a kilo though, so you usually get a little bit extra in there. And then this is my cooked plate. So I got some marrow here. I don't know if the audience can see that.
It
And
is showing up.
and this is ribeye. So
Okay.
I went all out for the stream today with ribeye.
That is
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's
And
about
I want to
12
give the
ounces.
audience some background here. I met you through our mutual friend Doug Wright.
Yes.
And I had a mukbang with Doug Wright here at historic Carnomad Studios on the back deck. And I'm sorry we're not able to do the same thing, but
I know.
it is only fitting for Doug's memory that I get to mukbang with his buddy Josh. I'm kidding, Doug. You're not dead. So I just wanted to throw that connection in. But you kind of gave us the overview of all that stuff, and can you just sort of fill us in on the background of, like, I think the organ meat that I saw there was liver, and then you also have bone marrow. Does that
Sure.
qualify as organ meat?
You know, I don't know. Like,
Me
I mean,
either.
I mean, it's not a muscle meat. I don't know if it's specifically an organ meat. I should know better after apprenticing as a butcher. But I think their whole recommendation for the liver isn't necessarily the necessity of it. It's that this diet is so low in volume that this is to help bring nutritional adequacy. Um,
Okay.
I'm not at all for nutritional density, and I think often people confuse or really conflate that with better health, and I don't think that's necessarily true.
Okay, yeah, that phrase nutrient density, I used to use that a lot, and then I started paying more attention to Amber O'Hearn, and I have stopped using nutrient density so much.
Sure.
It's there are problems with it. We don't have to get into that in this discussion, but I appreciate your sensitivity to this kind of language, and you've really paid a lot of attention. I paid attention to you on Twitter, and I see you paying attention to a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. You're a careful thinker, and so. Could you talk about, you're probably in a position, I do want to give you a chance to get a few bites in, of course, but could you talk about other ways that food that you've shown us might look and still be consistent with the PKD protocol that you'd recommend for, say, the majority of people who aren't you?
Sure. I think, like I was mentioning, the brisket's a great option, right? Another route you could go is untrimmed ribeye. That's something the Andersons do. Yeah. And I would say untrimmed ribeye probably hits that 2-to-1 mark pretty perfectly. Maybe not so much with grass finish. You might have to go for like a grain finished or something really well marbled like an Angus. But yeah, I would say that's pretty close. That might be a little bit more expensive. Butchers are usually happy to give you a discount on untrimmed cuts too. Another way you could go is pork belly.
Right.
Some people are adding some rendered fats. If you can deal with that, there might be a little bit of adaptation when starting with rendered fats, because I think they're absorbed a little bit easier, or they might be a little bit faster moving, motility wise, and you might just not be able to produce enough bile, and that might cause some GI distress initially. But rendered fats you could do are like lard and tallow. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that background information. And I know you want to eat, but this is a short question. I'm sorry, I can't filibuster for long. What motivated you to try PKD?
It's funny. The same things that kind of brought me to PKD were the same things that brought me to carnivore. And carnivore resolved a bunch of things for me. Things that I didn't go to carnivore to resolve. And while there was relief on carnivore, there were just underlying things that were just not fully healing up. And I was to a point where some of my experiments trying to resolve this issue were actually exacerbating the issue. And, I was actually considering maybe doing a consultation with them. And I'm a little bit of a student of N=1. So I kind of decided I was going to wing it first. And the results were, kind of instantaneous.
That's amazing, very powerful, and I'll comment here on the thing about N=1 over even background. Zsofia Clemens is extraordinarily accessible on Twitter. She has been nothing but supportive of people who are trying to do the sort of thing you're doing. As far as I can tell, she engages. She's available for questions and very helpful on clearing things up. So it's not as if it's impossible to reach her, and that's why you should do an N=1. Mm-hmm. The reason to do an N=1 is that no matter what she says or what she knows or what her experience is, you don't know what your experience is going to be until you do it. And so the fact that you're doing it, you're finding out for yourself how it's working for you is, I think, the kind of thing that whether people want to do a PKD approach or not, that attitude of the way to find out is to do it yourself. I just don't think sometimes I think that message gets lost, that we need to we need to look at a lot of studies and literature and find some kind of, I don't know, some research body that will validate us for trying something because they've already tried it. And the ease with which you can try this was demonstrated, I think, by your influence and the influence of some other people on Twitter. I'm thinking of Rilla of the North as someone that I follow on Twitter who's adopted the PKD approach. Also, I think it's Cambridge PT is another Twitter person I follow doing it. I just see people doing it. Now, I know a couple of viewers of this channel, including Elwood and Jim Caldwell, flirted with it. I don't think either of them lasted very long. And the thing is, that's okay. You could just, there's no harm. You try, it's not agreeing with you. Then you want to bail on it, and that's totally fine. And they're both happy with the results they were getting. They were happy with the results they were getting before anyway. It was just an experiment. But what about the possibility that someone tries it? Maybe they're just not used to liver. They're not used to such a fat heavy meal.
Mm-hmm.
Is there kind of a problematic adaptation phase where you might quit a little too early? Is that something that you worry about people doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing that some people could do, if that's kind of what they're experimenting with and finding trouble, is maybe reducing the meal size and trying to increase the frequency. Now, I've naturally gravitated towards an OMAD.
Okay.
I've really not done much OMAD on carnivore, but that's kind of where PKD brought me. But I think that might help somebody's bile production ramp up at least while they're adjusting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the reference to OMAD because that lets me throw in the acronym that I don't want to get through this without mentioning, which is WOPKDOMAD, WOPKDOMAD, which is what I'm considering doing. Doug, our friend Doug, has tried to organize a trip to the 2S Ranch that maybe it's going to happen soon and maybe it's not. It's kind of it's up in the air thing. But I'm hoping to come back from the 2S Ranch with some grass-fed liver and enough suet to try the PKD approach for maybe a week. Maybe I'll see how that goes. Maybe I won't last a week, but I am curious. I'm intrigued, and we'll see how that goes. Cool. All right, now I posted all these questions online, and so you've had a chance to see them and think about them. But now I just want to get you in your rhythm, and instead of shooting from the hip with what's occurring to me, here's an actual question that I sent you in advance. You've tweeted repeatedly on how stunning, satisfying the results of PKD have been. Can you compare it to some of the other nutritional protocols you followed and the pros and cons of those other approaches?
Sure. Let's start what really kicked off my weight loss journey. Back in 2013, there was kind of a passerby comment from a coworker about paleo. And so, I dug into that, found Sisson and Rob Wolf, and kind of jumped with both feet right into that. And I wasn't hungry. I wasn't counting calories. I was just eating. I was buying a lot of organic or local. Living in Florida at the time, and weight just kind of melted off. And it's kind of funny that I veered so far away from that because as I further got into restricting carbohydrates and I was kind of low carb at the time, definitely under 100 grams, probably under 50 grams. But as I got more into I have to be under 20 or 30 grams net carbs, I found myself really upping protein and following the advice of a lot of people that protein was this halo macronutrient, and it's not used the same way as fat or carbs. It's not obesogenic and all these things, and weight loss just got harder and harder, and I found myself kind of craving and yo-yoing and kind of binging and crashing, and I can't believe it's taken me, what is this? Like 5 years to make this connection. So
wow. So you started at paleo, and you're ending up on a PKD approach, which has paleo right there in the name.
Right there in the name.
And it took you 5 years to get from one to the other. And so this is something that we can get into now or later. But you have brought on the protein halo, and there are people who added questions to this list, and there's a concern about the P to E ratio and whether that works for people or not, and why you're defying it. Is that something you want to get into at this point?
Yeah.
Or do you want to put that on hold?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with protein. You could probably make similar arguments for other macronutrients, right? I think everything's context dependent. I think a lot of the people that advocate for protein from animal foods. But when it comes to other sources of energy, we see a lot of lumping everything in together. Dairy is the same as tallow, is the same as seed oils, and it's just not.
Right.
And I mean, it's just weird because observationally, maybe that's not a good example to look at what our ancestors ate. but observationally, they weren't necessarily striving for finding these lean, high protein foods. It was megafauna. It was big fatty animals. So I think for most people, yeah, protein's probably pretty satiating, but so is fiber, and I wouldn't advocate for fiber. I actually think the decrease in volume is one of the reasons that PKD is really helping my gut right now.
Okay, yeah, I share your emphasis on your lack of emphasis on volume. You want to be satisfied through the nutritional quality of what you're eating, not necessarily the amount of debris you can stuff down your gullet. So I do applaud that approach, and I think we're going to come back to that. I want to get some more background information
Sure.
before. There's some things I want to pick your brain about on PDE. So can you give us a general overview of your own nutritional journey with as much detail as possible about any digestive/dental setbacks you've experienced? And I don't know that you've had any dental setbacks.
Dental, no. I had one cavity. It was like very, very small, and that was in 2009. Otherwise, my teeth have been pretty good. I did have an issue when I was a kid. I had an overbite, it was a crossbite, and I did have a dental expander put into the palate of my mouth. And I actually think that probably I've been getting into the mewing stuff for a couple months now, and okay. I think that actually might have prevented some facial deformity. Because I always had sinus infections as a kid. I always ground my teeth at night. I would snore, and ever since then, the snoring was gone, the grinding was gone. So I think that kind of spared me some of that, some of those issues.
So that's a conventional intervention that you think worked.
Yeah, I think it was. But I think back, and I'm almost wondering if the dietary intervention would have been put in place, and if I had proper tongue posture back then, right, if that would have made a difference. I mean, the difference now, carnivore helps a lot with breathing, but even just correcting tongue posture helps with breathing too.
Okay, and I think as an aside here, tongue posture, you generally want, as a default, you want your tongue pressing up against your palate. Is
correct.
That right?
Yeah, correct. It should be kind of following the perimeter of the roof of your mouth along the teeth there. Yeah.
Right. I was interested. I was a lot more interested in that once upon a time. And then I just got distracted. I didn't lose faith in it or anything. I became interested in other things. But I do find that a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. All right. We will transition now to what's your exercise routine now, and how has that evolved over the years?
My exercise routine ethic has kind of gone out the window. I would say last year when I was really kind of having a hard time with carnivore, every time I would try to incorporate it in, it was kind of a feat of willpower, and it was just making me feel worse. And it was pretty common to see that when I would exercise, I would actually gain body fat. And that's contrary to what most people will tell you, but it's very clear to me that when there's underlying amounts of inflammation, adding more inflammation isn't going to be productive on the whole system. So.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I cut it out. I maybe did a couple workouts in early 2018, stopped altogether in April. And yeah, that's when I found Wobo and the weight started coming off again. But PKD has really kind of brought back so much energy that I've kind of been channeling that on the days that I felt like it into working out. I'm a little bit like you. I'm hedonistic. If I want to work out and be in the sun, I'm gonna be out there. If I don't feel like it, I'm not. That's it. I'm not very inclined to do things I don't want to do.
Well, I meant to open this with, and I forgot. I got distracted because of our screen share discussion. I meant to open this with the before and afters that I have buried in DMs on my Twitter account, and I know that you've gone from being, it's not like you were in terrible shape before, but the improvement since PKD is observable. It's a noticeable improvement in your physique. And something that came out very clearly in our discussions over Twitter that I want to make sure people pick up on in this conversation is you're no stranger to the idea of a protein sparing modified fast. You're no stranger to the idea of trying to do everything with protein and go with low fat and low carb.
Yep, did that.
And protein is the thing you're going to rely on. And your experience is that doesn't result in a great physique for you. And then you add fat. You add fat to that and you lean out. And this is contrary to what a lot of people assume is the case, because a lot of people assume wherever there's energy in the food, whether it's sugar or fat, wherever there's energy, that's energy that you don't need. You should be burning your own body fat for energy. Really, all you need is protein. Why don't you just eat protein? So
yeah, I want to touch on that. I actually think that in people who used to be very overweight, for me, I peaked out at 270. And the paleo had brought me down to about 185, which is funny because that's about where I am now. And when I did the protein sparing modified fast, I was probably on it for about 7 months doing the cycles as Lyle McDonald prescribes in his RFL, and following the Facebook groups that really heavily push this and the Reddit groups that push this. And I was doing everything as advised, taking the maintenance breaks, doing everything. And the weight loss was just so slow. And I looked so emaciated. My eyes were sunken. My rib cage was really kind of just I was shrinking width-wise, structurally. And I think carnivore addressed a lot of that, to be honest. I think my body needed to be in a fed state, and it needed a lot of nutrients. And I think that's probably why PKD has lended itself to not making me skinny fat.
Right.
But with PSMF, it was just torture.
Okay. And I don't know how far you are through your meal. I mean, how much have you got left? Have you satisfied your hunger?
I'm done with the raw foods. We're on to the cooked here. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I know you're busy, and I'm trying to stall and not get you slowed down by the graph management. But
sure, let's go into the graphs.
We're getting to a point to look into what actually happened, because I'll give viewers some background information. You're a data nerd. I mean, you really do an excellent job of tracking information and rendering it into graph form, and it makes some pretty clear points. So I look forward to having you walk us through some of the things you've tried and some of the results you've got.
Sure. You ready for that now?
Fire away.
All right. So I'll pull up the, let's see here. All right, let me pull this up. So this would be the full trend over carnivore here. You see that, Mike?
That's 2 years, right?
Yeah, this is almost 2 years. I just passed 23 months. So prior to this was my stint with PSMF. Just to give some background, after PSMF, my health had gotten so bad. My GI was bad. My mood was bad. My core body temperature had dropped to about 95.6 to 96.2 consistently. I felt like death. And I kept trying to do keto and PSMF, and it was like any time that I ate above 1,500 calories, I would just gain body fat. It was like my body just was saying, give me food. And within the span of about 45 or 50 days, I was back up to 230 pounds, which was twice the weight that I had lost on 7 months of using PSMF as a protocol. Yeah. And so I had actually been digging around the carnivore subreddit for a while, just trying to get info, because it was clear to me that anytime I was eating something fibrous, my stomach would get impacted, and I would get distended, and I would break out, and like acutely break out. My skin would just start falling off, and I was just having these very quick, very negative reactions to food. And so I kind of sat on the carnivore idea for almost 5 or 6 months, kind of afraid to pull the trigger, because the idea of now going from paleo and all these fruits and veggies being so important to getting rid of them was crazy.
Okay, and, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but that is a fascinating psychology. What triggered that? I mean, was it Georgia Ede talking to you about anti-nutrients, maybe, or what made you pull the trigger finally?
I I was too desperate. I
Okay.
I I had not had asthma as bad as any point in my life as that period of time. I was going through about 2 to 3 rescue inhalers a month, and for anybody that doesn't know, a albuterol inhaler usually has about 180 puffs. So somebody could do the math. I'm not going to do the math on this, but that's a lot of reliance on something that's supposed to be in an emergency situation. I was using a nebulizer. I couldn't breathe. I was waking up. I couldn't breathe, and it just got to the point where I was like, I need to have some sort of intervention. And I started off stupidly. I was still kind of in the mindset of I needed to cut calories, and so I did, half chicken, half beef. Still kind of kept calories low, and you can kind of see at the start of this graph, weight starts coming off pretty quick. But the interesting thing is here, and we're going to move to another graph because this is a little bit more informative. Here it kind of shows you I'm using fasting. I'm eating some beef, and then I'm going back to like PSMF here. I just didn't learn my lesson, right? But I figured as long as I didn't eat the plants, I was going to be okay. And that's kind of true. I had pretty much instantaneous relief of breathing. It wasn't permanent. It was temporary, and I'll get into that at some point. And then as you can see here, this N equals M. Well, this was Shawn Baker, and what really kind of turned the tide for me was I was going to do this study, and I remember having a discussion with my mom, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to eat as much food as I need to eat. I don't care if I gain weight anymore. I need to fix my health. I can't keep feeling like this. And if I ever need to lose weight again, at least I know I can always cut calories. So let's just dive all in and see what happens.
Right.
And so I did the N equals many, and things were going great. Energy was good. Workouts were pretty good. But then we get right around here, and I have my first symptoms of Candida die off. And I didn't know what it was. To be honest, before this, I was seeing doctors and gastroenterologists, and I thought I had some sort of dysbiosis, but I thought it was SIBO. I thought maybe I had UC or Crohn's. A lot of them, of course, wanted me on antibiotics, antifungals. They wanted to scope me. And then this die-off happened, and it was 36 hours that pretty much confirmed within the first 6 hours that I had a lot of yeast, like a lot of yeast. So, yeah. And so weight stays kind of steady throughout here.
Okay.
And you can see protein's actually not that bad. It's about 260, 261 I'm averaging daily. Calories also aren't that high for what most would consider high. Right? It's about what my calculated catch McArdle is. For anybody that doesn't know, that's a basal metabolic rate that calculates based on your lean body mass. And I have kind of an idea of where that is based on DEXA scans that I've taken, but I still think that's all bunk. But anyways,
okay.
So moving on, this is where I decide, I want to be big and strong like Shawn. I start getting into to powerlifting, and I start butchering, and so I'm super active. And throughout this point, I'm probably eating about 15 to 17 kilograms of really lean beef at this point. And some of the other Twitter gurus kind of got in my head. Protein's a halo. Protein's good. So I went leaner. And before this, I was eating chuck. I was eating brisket. I was eating like fattier cuts, and that's what was keeping protein low and appetite kind of satiated. And so through here, some of this is muscle. I would say probably about 5 pounds of it is muscle. And then we get to here, and I've crashed. My body just couldn't cope anymore. It completely destabilized mood. I wasn't sleeping good. I was hungry all the time. I would eat like 4 pounds in a sitting, and I would be like, oh my God, I still need to eat. And I would eat another 3 pounds. I had one day where I ate almost 8 pounds of beef. Another day where I ate 7 pounds in a sitting. Like I was ravenous. I was ravenous. it didn't click. It didn't click, you know? And so mood crashed, appetite crashed, and this is probably muscle loss right here. And then what you see is you see this climb back up through late January into early April here, and that's all body fat. And I
No
have
way
a
it's
picture.
muscle.
No way. So let's go to a picture here. So this is what I ended up looking at like, and so this is where I started in that trend. I was still a little bit overweight. I was not as lean as I wanted to be. I was having a lot of trouble trying to get lean because I was pretty lean on PSMF, the leanest I'd ever been. This is still heavier than I was on keto or paleo. And I just couldn't understand why other people would do carnivore and they would get lean, and I was struggling. And so yeah, I ended up. This is the fattest I've been on carnivore. I was over 210 pounds, peaking at 216. My waist went up to 38 and a quarter. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't fit in any of my clothes. It felt awful. It felt awful. And then I found you, Mike. Then I found you.
And Wobo.
Yeah, so I stupidly start doing like these 5-day fasts here, right? I hear some information by Peter Attia, and he's talking about like doing these 500 calorie fasts with one of his clients that just can't lose weight, and it's working for him. He'll just do them at the beginning of the month. So I'm like, oh, I can do a modified approach to that. So I start doing it, and what you see is I lose the weight and then I regain the weight. And this is also when I started eating a lot of raw. Not that I've been averse to raw. I've always eaten my steak pretty much blue. I like raw steak. So what you could see through this time, though, is this is what I wanted to highlight, is that protein went way up, calories went way up. I was just eating an enormous amount of food, and nothing I would do would slow that down. So
Focusing on protein. I mean, this is a graphical illustration. Focusing on protein makes you fat.
Yeah,
in your case.
Yeah. In my experience, protein slows weight loss. I think in a caloric deficient state, it might be sparing to muscle, sure.
Okay.
But I'm hungry. The body is not regulating. I am trying to impose order on a system. I'm telling my body, I want you to be thin. When I just give my body what it needs, it restores order. That is the purpose of eating. Give your body a chance to do what it needs to do.
Couldn't agree more. That's a Blake Donaldson way of looking at it, in my opinion.
So I find Wobo. I saw your video on palatability, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. So let's try removing salt. Let's try doing all these different things. Let's do ground beef. And the thing that didn't click until PKD was that when I switched to the Blake Donaldson approach that you laid forth was, well, those 78-22 burgers from Costco, they're practically a 1-to-1 ratio. And I think they're actually a little fattier than that. I think they might be like 4-to-3 or something.
Okay.
So yeah, and then the weight loss it starts coming off, and you can see like, yeah, the fasting did help, and that makes sense, right?
Sure.
But you can't sustain not eating, and so yeah, so I was just eating to appetite, and I found that my food volume went down, and my weight started going down, and I started feeling better. And I would say it's right around here, yeah, that I moved to California with my girlfriend. She likes a lot more variety than I do. And so we started buying like untrimmed ribeye and untrimmed brisket and all that. And I'm eating the fat, drinking some of the rendered fat, just fat was doing good. I think this right here was some stints with raw dairy, moving out to California. I had to try it.
Sure.
This right here, this was the flu. I caught the flu and I couldn't eat for a couple days, and I don't know. I've heard that sometimes getting pretty sick, whether it's the flu or some other virus, can actually help reset your immune system. And I do think I have some underlying infection or latent issues. I don't know if it's candida related or if it's something else. But this seemed to actually help drop me under 185, and I actually maintained that for a week, and that was the leanest that I had been until PKD.
Okay.
So
That's real impressive. And can you summarize why you think that might? Not can you speculate? Not summarize. Can you speculate why did adding a little fat to the protein do so much to correct your metabolic disorder?
yeah. So the funny thing is, at that time, I I had corresponded a little bit with and read a lot of this blogger. It's the Woo, and she definitely hates carnivory. But she's somebody who used to be pretty obese and has maintained her weight loss through a low carb diet, and she gives a lot of really good reasons um, or suppositions that fat is actually more satiating than protein, especially in people that have weight regulation issues, which I think I would classify as. And so there's some idea to insulin-induced adipocyte hyperplasia, where your adipocytes can't grow fast enough, so they mature other cells. And I'm probably getting the science wrong,
Okay.
but basically, she ties it into leptin issues. And as you start to lean out, your body wants to be at a certain set point, and this is what leptin is signaling. And and it would kind of make sense why I got so cold and why my core temperature dropped so much when I was really starving myself. And she goes further into some mechanisms like CCK being released with bile production for fat, and that signaling a nutrient dense, or not nutrient dense, an energy dense meal, and actually suppressing the production of amylase. So she's got some interesting things. She shows some like isomacronutrient studies where protein is actually responsible for increasing insulin and spiking ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone, right?
Right.
And fat actually shows a decline in ghrelin and a baseline insulin. So I have no doubt that people that have healthier metabolisms probably feel pretty great on protein, right? Protein is a useful and needed macronutrient, but it doesn't make sense to me that we should be demonizing animal fats in particular, because energy has a purpose. Like we still need energy, and
Right.
we know protein doesn't convert to energy very well. So
And not only do we need energy, but fat does some pretty important things other
correct,
than
right? It's
other than
essential.
being energy.
Yes.
And so maybe that just, I don't know, lubricates the system if we're thinking of
Well,
fat as grease and that sort of way.
I kind of wonder. Well, I think for as far as GI health is concerned, I do think the fat's needed there, and I think maybe if you have some weight regulation issues, that maybe protein is causing some of these hormones to respond in a way that does not allow you to have access to that extra adipocytes that you need to extract fat cells from, right? And so what it's going to do, I think, is take enough of what it needs, but at the same time, you're gonna start feeling tired. It's gonna start down regulating other systems,
Okay.
and that's really gonna just be counterproductive to what your goals are. If your goal is to sustain weight loss, you're gonna need to have those hormones functioning properly. If your goal is to get ready for a photo shoot or a competition, sure, you're probably gonna cut calories and eat more protein and look great, but it's short lasting. It's temporary.
Right. Okay. That is a lot of information. And do you have more graphs, or can we get your smiling face?
I do have one more graph, but
Okay,
just
go
illustrate
ahead.
that
Finish that.
during that WOBO period, that the protein had actually dropped to 170. And
Okay.
I think the last graph is this. So this is where my protein went after WOBO. I started really heavily diving into dairy and eating lots and lots of liver, sometimes two pounds of liver a day. And what I was finding was that I was just always hungry. And I'm sure part of that is the carbs and the dairy. Some of that is probably the carbs and the liver also being, provoking an insulin response.
Sure.
But protein's still kind of low, but I was hungry. I was really hungry, and calories actually weren't that high. But the interesting thing that happened during this time period, let me go to the graph. Oh, there it was during this time period is I did some stints with Wobo, right? and the Wobo calories were as much, if not more, than what I was eating when I was doing basically 60-40 in this dairy phase, right? 60-40 in that dairy phase. And I was still losing weight, independent of calories. And so then I think you remember during the Wobomat, I would find myself hungry very quickly. So I would have to force feed about 3 pounds a day just to not be hungry. And
wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of food, but I was still losing weight.
And so you were drinking kefir at that time, is that right?
During Wobo, no.
Oh, okay.
Wobo, no dairy. It was strict burgers only. During Wobomat, strict burgers, only 1 meal a day.
Gotcha.
And I think that mitigated a lot of the weight gain that could have happened there.
I agree. There's a thing about I think dairy sort of defies explanation in a lot of ways. What it makes happen, the things that it triggers. But okay, so please tell us anything else about any of the graphs or anything we need to see from your screen before I get back into a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I'll leave it with this PKD graph here. This is you can see at the end of leaner, I was back over 200 pounds, about 206, and I dropped to about 85.4. I actually, I think, hit a low of 185.2 2 days ago, and that's where I am today. And this rate of weight loss, as well as the rate of oblique measurement here, is almost identical to the weight that I lost on PSMF. The difference is that I'm eating 2.5 to 3 times as many calories here, half as much protein, and the rate of weight loss occurred 3 times faster.
That's a fantastic comparison. Is it easy for you to get that other one back just to compare? Oh, folks, I believe we have lost Logical Links, and I am going to try to get him back. I think he was probably clicking on something accidentally as he was screen sharing. Okay, I just sent another invitation. You are back. That was well done.
So the last thing that I left you with was that it occurred 3 times faster, and you were going into a question there.
Yeah, I just those graphs that people can go up and can review them and see that what was hard, arduous, time-consuming could be achieved in a sort of a pain-free way that was also faster. That's the takeaway.
Right.
And the key was, more than anything, adding in fat. Is that right? Is that the right?
Yeah, I probably eat about 190 grams of fat a day. On PSMF, it was under 20.
That is a big difference. And I know that's not that. The thing is, that's not true for everybody.
Sure.
And you haven't denied that PSMF works for lots of people,
sure,
and that protein is a very satiating macronutrient. But because we're on Twitter, the squeaky wheels are attracted to Twitter. So you find people for whom the formulas aren't working are the ones who come to Twitter with questions about why they're not working, and they find their way to conversations like the ones we have. And so, in the conversations we have, you've been critical, I think, of something that I don't want to overstate or misrepresent, but the P to E ratio or the protein leverage hypothesis, the idea that if you just stick to protein and keep the carbs and the fat low enough, things will take care of themselves. That doesn't seem to be your experience. And you've been involved with a bunch of different online communities, from Reddit to the Twitter community and others, your own Discord. And so you have access to all these different communities. And I suspect there are myths that you keep seeing perpetuated despite your having experienced evidence to the contrary And I just want to put you up on a soapbox and have you sort of share some of your wisdom with people, Josh. I mean, what do you say to people? Not everyone's getting the same results. Obviously, there's such a thing as bio-individuality. You don't want to overstate things and say flat out, there's no reason ever to do a PSMF. But at the same time, it seems like my impression, my read on you is that you think the PSMF approach might really have the effect of just sort of reinforcing calorie restriction in a community that really needs to be focusing on satiation. I'm not trying to put words on your mouth.
No, well, PSMF is definitely calorie restricting. I'm not sure if you meant to say the P to E ratio there.
Yes, right.
That to me is a calorie restriction hack. And I don't see it as beneficial because I could see that as being inadequate for other forms of nutrition, right? Your vitamins, your minerals. And I think a lot of people that might find success with that are really loading up on like fibers and leafy greens. And that's something coming from a carnivore perspective is just not going to work for a lot of people. You know, I can see for some people it could be useful, like I said, in like a photo shoot kind of situation or a recomp bodybuilding kind of thing. But I don't think that's a way you're going to sustain a physique. And I do think there are outliers that probably thrive around 60 to 40 by calories of fat to protein. And that's still not low fat. I don't think the people that are pushing P to E are necessarily pushing eating chicken breast and you know, lots of fiber. But I could see how the public would take it that way. And I feel that there's a little bit of the demonizing of fat going on in that circle, and that's kind of what's forcing people to, you know, trim the fat off their steak and opt for leaner cuts. And I don't think that's gonna play out well for the majority of people.
Okay, so I mean, for the majority, you're not finding that to be an advisable sort
Correct.
of approach. That's your opinion. And I want to you specifically asked me not to drag Ted Naiman's name into this, and I wouldn't have. But one of our followers on Twitter, Tall Redhead, dragged his name into the conversation by appending this question to the list that I sent you. And you know, her question is basically just very simply, but how can you defy Ted Naiman, right? I mean, it's P to E is the Ted Naiman approach. And just for viewers of this channel who have forgotten this, I'm one of the world's biggest Ted Naiman fans. I mean, I sing the praises of Ted Naiman all the time. But what I saw you do on Twitter, and I didn't want to get into it, but you did interact with Ted. You called him out on this P to E advocacy
a few times, yeah.
And he's responded, and you have civil conversations, and I appreciate that civility is maintained. But you clearly have a difference of opinion. And his opinion, I think, I can't speak for Ted, but I think his take is that some people are getting it wrong, and the demonizing of fat is not something he's trying to do. He's certainly on team demonize fat plus carbs, but he's not going to try to demonize fat. But he keeps pushing this P to E ratio, which has the effect. I mean, objectively, you have to concede it has the effect of saying the less fat and the more protein, the better. That does seem to be the message he's pressing. And clearly it's a message that's resonated with Tall Redhead. It resonated with me. And I think I'm not asking you to be rude. And I'm not trying to pour gasoline on a fire by pretending there's a conflict between you and Ted Naiman that there isn't. There's a difference of opinion. But I really just want to give you an opportunity to explain why you think that the Naiman crowd might be a little bit too consistently over applying this. And I don't know. It seems to sometimes there is a little bit of a bleed through between that crowd and the crowd that's likely to call Jimmy Moore a butter chugger. And I'm not saying they're the same crowd at all.
Sure.
But there's if a Venn diagram is going to show some people being in both of those camps.
Sure.
And could you just sort of talk psychologically about the pitfalls of that approach?
I'm not going to address Jimmy Moore because I don't actually follow his stuff. But I don't think it's conducive to the conversation for Ted to put out graphics that say you are what you eat and then show somebody eating fat and a fat person.
Okay.
I do think he's team animal food. I think that's great. But my general advice to people would to be your own scientist. I know that's hard for a lot of people to sometimes perform their N=1 and see where they feel best, because a lot of people aren't willing to take a step back in their vanity for the sake of their health. And that's hard. It's hard, especially when you have some body dysmorphia issues. I can empathize with that. But my general advice after that would be, if you're going to follow someone's advice, don't follow someone's advice that's never been obese and sustained the weight loss.
Okay. Yeah. And that is one criticism that I get from when I sing Ted's praises too much. I invariably get someone commenting on a video, "Hey, Mike, Ted he started out not being in great shape, but he wasn't wrecked the way some people are wrecked and need help. And he may not be able to relate to that metabolic state as well as one might think, even though I know a viewer of this channel who is a patient of Ted Naiman's. And I know she's metabolically challenged, and one suspects that he's alert to that. So I'm not trying to, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm certainly not saying anything hateful towards Ted Naiman.
I'm sure he is a great physician that works much differently on a individual basis with his patients.
Right.
I think his message is a message that he's trying to be the other end of the spectrum for butter chugging, right?
Right.
He doesn't want to be, I don't think he wants to be inflammatory. I think he's just trying to silence the noise that is fat bombs. And
Right.
I think that's fine, but I don't think one extreme cancels out another. I think there needs to be some middle ground or some honest dialogue about, there's significant individual variance, and protein can be a staller in weight loss. And actually, I really look forward to hearing what might be coming out of some people's posts and future interviews concerning insulin to glucagon, and maybe some misrepresentation or misunderstanding of Bickman's data on that.
Yeah, right. And I got caught up in that myself. And I'm very eager to see what will come out of that as well. And there'll be more to say when there's more to say. I'm going to switch gears here to some questions that drifted in. I have 3 final questions for you from me. But
Sure.
Before I get to those, I want to get in the additional questions that came from people on Twitter. You've responded to Tall Redhead's question about the P/E ratio, and now I want to skip down to a question from Dr. Jerome Craig. And you mentioned the DEXA scan that you've done, so I know you're a person who's curious about getting objective measurements about your body. And here's what Craig writes, and you may not have any data for him, but the question behind the question is, if you don't have any data, why is that? Not that this is the measure of health, but really curious about whether there are any before and after labs, specifically TSH, and I think that's thyroid stimulating hormone, but I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
Sure.
And any other hormonal markers that were tracked.
So thyroid's a important one to me, because that's something that was really thrown off before carnivory. I do have labs 3 months into carnivore.
Okay.
I have labs 6 months into carnivore where I did reverse my thyroid markers.
Oh.
I reversed my iodine, and I reversed my retinal deficiency. I normalized my iron status. I basically normalized everything, and some of them, at least looking at the iron labs, were pretty indicative of like an underlying infection. So I think that's kind of interesting, because it was during the time that I was going through a lot of the candida stuff. What's going to be kind of cool is I do have lab work coming up, because the PKD experiment did spark some interest from some more curious, more data nerdy people than myself. And so that should be coming soon. In regards to DEXA, I think it's actually a very poor indicator of physical fitness. I could show pictures. I'm not going to. But I have two DEXAs 3 months apart, about 20-pound difference, and the DEXA put me 1% difference on both of those. And when you really look at the pictures, they actually look about 8% apart. What I have found better is a Sculpt device, which is handheld bioimpedance, and that kind of tracks different areas of the body and kind of estimates. So while that might not be the most accurate, I think it does give a better overall trend, and it's certainly better than some of the bioimpedances that you step on or you grab.
Okay.
But yeah, lab work should be coming out soon.
Okay. And that's fantastic. Are your labs posted anywhere? Is it possible for me to link to them from the video, or is that?
I don't have them posted. That's something that I plan to maybe discuss when I have the most recent labs.
Okay, cool, great.
Just to add to that, my fasting insulin 6 months in was 2.1, and my fasting blood glucose was 2. So I definitely think that the weight gain wasn't me being necessarily in a chronic hyperinsulinemic state. It was something that was happening post-fed state.
I've got to process that. That everything in my world is built on chronic hyperinsulinemia. I see everything through the lens of chronic hyperinsulinemia, and I know I need a more sophisticated view, and that's going to help me formulate that view. So I appreciate that information. I've got two questions here from Lieutenant Columbo on Twitter, so-called, because he asks a lot of questions, and so he has two for you. You once said, when you stop counting and tracking, you'll eat intuitively. Which basic rules will you follow then, as far as 1, which foods you'll eat, 2, in what proportions you'll eat them, and 3, how much total food you'll eat?
I kind of eat a little bit intuitively now. It's hard to get over that obsession of tracking, but that's something that I plan to make a concerted effort to do. I don't think it's healthy long term. Might lend itself a little bit to orthorexia, but it's pretty easy to visualize fat versus lean. You're just kind of looking to have about 1/3 of pure fat to the lean, because lean muscle meat isn't all protein. Sometimes people get that confused. It's only about 22% protein.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water, but fat is dense. Fat is almost pure fat. There's a small amount of collagen in it and a little bit of water, but it's very minute. And I'd like to do kind of what the Andersons do. It's expensive to eat a lot of untrimmed ribeye. That'd be probably the most delicious way to go. But I probably am going to be buying a lot more untrimmed brisket, kind of eyeballing it, cutting off what I think is too much, or eating until I feel good, and saving the rest, and then maybe eating some leaner cuts like chuck with the stuff that I save.
Okay, but you're not mentioning ground beef. Is there something sort of un-PKD-ish about ground beef?
I like Wobo. I think it's great. It really simplifies life. I can't do 73-27. That's how I started. The rendered fat is too much. It's soupy. I will say that it actually comes out really nice if you chill it. And that's kind of one of the things I want to do. I want to, cut off a nice piece of brisket, slow cook it. So you get your pulled brisket and let it chill in the fat. It kind of reminds me of like a beefier tuna and mayo, and that'll be fun, and that'll be very PKD-ish. I actually plan to I'm going to say transition off of PKD to what Amber O'Hearn calls keto AF. And the AF means animal foods, just because I've kind of lost my interest in marrow. And I like liver, so I have no problem eating that every day. I've eaten well over 100 pounds of liver since I've been carnivore, and sometimes too much. But but yeah, I'm pretty much just going to eyeball it, go by feeling. I think that's the most important thing for people to understand, is it's not some magical ratio. It's kind of like how you look, how you feel. If you're not feeling like you have much energy, maybe you didn't eat enough fat. If you're kind of feeling like you're not recovering well from exercise, or you're feeling sore, maybe you didn't eat enough protein. And we have normal signals for this. We have a satiety signal for too much fat, and you'll get nauseous if you eat too much fat. So
right, okay. And you can start to feel bad if you eat too much protein too, and that's
for sure. I do.
There's there are all kinds of signals that if we just allow them to speak to us, will tell us what to do. I'm all for experimentation and N equals one, but I'm also for the simplicity of understanding that your body really knows what to do if you just let it. So another question from Lieutenant Colombo. PKD prescribes fat to protein equals 2 as the ratio, meat plus organs. What do you think someone without known health issues will be missing out on if they do fat to protein equals 1 or maybe 1.5, as long as they include some organs?
Oh, I don't think the organs are completely necessary. I think when you're eating 2 to 1, you're eating something that is so very energy dense, right? The volume's key here. That by eating so little meat, you might be missing out on certain nutrients that are only stored in the muscle, and those are very plentiful in like something like liver. I think for somebody who's at a healthy weight, they're probably going to eat more than I'm eating. I tend to eat about 550 to 600 grams a day of food, and about 150 of that is pure fat. And I think that if you're pretty healthy and you're pretty active, you're going to eat a lot more. You probably cover your nutritional bases. If you eat leaner, you'll cover your nutritional bases. And I don't see the harm though if you want to eat like a little bit of fish. If you're really concerned with that, eat a little bit of liver. But I don't think I don't think the ratio is the magic. I really think what PKD is doing is trying to cover all nutritional bases while minimizing volume to give your stomach a break. I think fasting achieves a similar thing, but like I said, you can't sustain not eating.
Okay. And on the organ point, I don't want to misrepresent what I've heard Zsofia Clemens say, but in one context, it seemed like she was ready to concede that if you're not in a diseased state, the organs might not be so important. And in another context, it seems like she kind of backed off that and wanted to impress upon people the importance of being sure to get the organs in. Do you have a clear read on her? Am I misremembering something?
I don't, to be honest. I don't know what I would say, but I think all the people that are doing carnivore, that are eating much higher volume of food, it's kind of evidence to the fact that organs probably aren't as necessary. I don't think even grass finished is as necessary. So
right, and
most of my food is grain fed. So
right, and I didn't mean to imply earlier that I think there's something necessary about the grass-fed liver. It's just that I don't like conventional liver, and I am assured by people like Doug Wright that grass-fed is so much tastier. That's why I'm thinking the only way I'd be able to make this go with liver included is going to be to try with some grass-fed liver. So
I've had both, and I don't really. I'm sure some people will say my palate is unrefined. I don't notice a difference, man.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference is going to be between the calf and the mature cow. Breed is probably the most impactful thing on flavor when it comes to those things. I don't think it's the finishing.
I hope people are sticking around for this part of the interview, because that is totally unexpected. I did not expect to hear that. And that just sounds rational to me. That sounds like a reasonable assessment. And I suspect that after I get grass-fed liver, I will find that I don't like it much better than grain-fed liver. So
Walmart's probably a hop skip away from you. So
there are Walmarts in Austin. I do not go to them. We have HEB here. HEB is a grocery store chain worth supporting, in my opinion.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So last question from outside before we get to one that we added. This is from Fergie, who mentions the keto AF approach that you already covered from Amber O'Hearn, and that AF does stand for animal foods, not what you think. And so the first part of her question is, what's the most palatable way to add fat? And you've already, something I kind of wanted to jump in on earlier was when you were talking about butter chugging, is that relates to one of the first things you said. There's probably an important difference between butter chugging and tallow chugging.
Sure.
And there's probably a big difference between tallow chugging and chugging or eating a fatty ribeye where the fat's not rendered out. So these things are, there's obviously a spectrum here, but let's say you need to just add fat to a dish that you're comfortable cooking. You just want to add some animal fat to it. Just add some suet. Is that your approach?
I lost my taste for suet. about
Okay.
a week ago. I got a batch that was pretty dry. The girlfriend likes it. I don't. She likes it because it's less beefy. I like the more beefy flavor. So I've been eating a lot of the brisket trimming, the chuck trimming, the ribeye trimmings that we have. I think that's probably the easiest because that's going to be the most familiar for people. Suet tastes a little different. It can get a little waxy. Um, you know, if people want to like make like their baconaise or something like that, because eggs can be allowed if you're not suffering from severe gut issues. You could make kind of like something like that, I'm sure, and a little bit of lard and drop an egg in there and something, make whip something up. That might be easier. Um, Even marrow. A lot of people like marrow raw. I'm not a fan of marrow raw, so
Okay, but marrow is a nice addition, and it's certainly tasty.
it's
Um,
very fatty. Yeah.
uh, and the second part of Fergie's three-part question is, do you have a comment on the difference between meat from different animals? You kind of started by talking about pork in Hungary versus beef as your preference here in the States. Any further thoughts on varieties of animals on PKD?
Um, yeah, I've pretty much eaten 99.9% of beef the time that
Okay.
I've been carnivore. It's kind of weird. I didn't really eat a lot of beef until my late 20s. I always opted for chicken. Didn't even like pork that much, and it's kind of reversed now. I can't stand chicken on carnivore.
Okay.
I really kind of don't like pork. Bacon makes me sick. I don't miss bacon. Which is
Interesting.
funny because I ate a lot of bacon and eggs when I was keto, a lot of it, and I miss eggs. I wish I could have eggs, and but yeah, beef is so good. Another thing, going back to her first question, is you could make pemmican. I don't know if you saw Amber
Okay.
O'Hearn made some pemmican. Pemmican tends to be about PKD ratios. There's also my friend Doug just sent me the carnivore bar, which it's I think this bar is about a 1.5 to 1 ratio, or so like a 3 to 2. So it's not quite there, but it's close. Those might be more palatable ways of adding some fat, but I'm big on beef.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I get the impression that Hungarians would be bigger on beef if it were more available to them. That's just my guess. And then the third question touches back on the keto F. What influenced you to decide to go keto AF after next month?
Yeah, I mean, technically I'm keto AF already, right? Like the labels get a little silly sometimes. I think people might confuse and think that I'm going from carnivore back to keto. I actually had somebody DM me and they thought I was never a carnivore because they saw keto in my profile or something like that, or PKD, because you see PKD and you see paleo keto,
Right.
and you don't realize that might be meat only. And
Sure.
but yeah, no, I've been a carnivore. I'm staying a carnivore. I'm just focusing on more fat, and it's something that Ash Simmons talked about when I was like first carnivore. I saw this post where he had an example about eating a pound of suet versus eating 5 pounds of lean, very similar in calories, and one keeps them fuller twice as long, and that'd be the fat. And I don't know why that didn't stick with me. I'm like kicking myself now, like learn everything the hard way.
Right. And not only the hard way, but twice or maybe three or four
Twice,
times.
yeah, twice.
So the final question that we added for discussion before we get to the three easy ones at the end
Sure.
is about the psychological struggle associated with weight gain on carnivory. And I'm going to mention to viewers here the thing I always mention, which I think the best interview I've seen on this is the discussion between Kelly Hogan and Gary Kerwin of Biohackers Lab, in which she talks about how she went drastically low carb to lose weight, and it was a battle. She finally got the weight off, and then she decided that she was going to try carnivory. And when she tried, the weight came on, and she does a great job. The reason I refer people to that specific interview is because of how she describes the fears in her mind. Like, weight is coming back up. I'm eating meat to satiety, and the people in the zeroing in on health group are telling me it's fine, but I'm gaining weight, and this does not feel fine. And can you just sort of address those?
Yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit, right? Like I was telling my mom I'm just ready to fix my health, right? Like you get to a desperate point where vanity just doesn't matter as much. But you know, um I think, gosh, I just lost the thought.
Okay.
uh,
Well, it was about the trigger psychological struggle associated with weight loss.
yeah, I had the thought, and then it was
Okay.
gone. I think though, like for me, this is it. When I was gaining weight, it's very hard, right? It's very hard. You have a lot of friends, especially when you're like lean and fit and ripped, and they look at you as like somebody who's achieved something. Especially when, for me, I went from 270 to 170, right? I was
Mhm.
lean. People see the outside and they think, oh, healthy, right? Look at what he's achieving. But inside they don't see how much I'm struggling, how much my gut hurts, the daily struggle with just reacting to food and feeling like crap all the time. And you go carnivore and you kind of start worrying, like, what is this family member going to think? They're going to judge me. This friend's going to like think I'm fat again, and it's because I'm eating meat, right? I'm so stupid, I'm eating all this meat. And you really worry about that. Like, I think for people that have struggled with that, and that's something that I struggled with, you just kind of have to say, F it, like
Right.
just kind of brush it to the side and focus on you. Like, you got to not worry about what other people think. And weight loss is a byproduct of health.
Okay.
It's something that's going to come in time. You just have to be patient and keep at it.
Right. And I think that is a fantastic attitude. As long as we remain focused on health first and foremost, everything should be easy. When we focus on vanity, things become hard because the stakes are pretty freaking low. If vanity is what you're playing for, man, the temptation to stray is pretty strong,
It
especially if
is,
you're
yeah.
malnourished, if you're hungry.
I
Um,
think that's the great thing about carnivory, though, is um, that struggle might be real, but on any other diet, I think if I wasn't getting the weight loss results, I would have bailed. On carnivory, the health impacts were so great that I was like, I can't ever stop. Like,
oh,
I
okay.
can't.
I want to pick your brain in a little more detail on this. You did mention your mood and attitude, and I know you're not getting into great detail on
Yeah.
this, but you mentioned your mood and attitude improving when you went carnivore. Did it improve? Did that improve further on PKD, or did that stay level?
100%, 100%. And yeah, I will be doing a very long interview with Tristan about this. But I'm not completely ready to talk about that just yet. Just
Okay,
just a
right.
teaser.
I
But
just wanted to put the context in the context of PKD. It did have mood benefits as well as physical.
absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, right? I didn't have the energy to work out for like a year. Now I do. Like, that alone, like, I started sleeping better. I started feeling blissful. Like, all these things that, like, you just might not experience as much, um, depending on where you're starting from. And I know for a lot of people, carnivory is just this. It's almost like a panacea for them. Like, they might not have super severe issues and things clear up overnight. But I want people to understand that for a lot of us that are really struggling, don't give up. It gets better, but it's slow. Like, it takes time to reverse a lot of your issues.
Okay, and I appreciated the teaser there and the Tristan name drop. For attentive viewers, that's going to be Tristan Haggard over at Primal Health, Primal Edge Health, and I suspect you've already scheduled an interview with him. And
It's
I
not.
know
It's not. It's tentative. It's not
tentative.
scheduled yet, but it
So
should be. It should be in a few weeks, maybe a month.
okay, and you have something lined up with Scott Mislinski of the Carnivore Cast,
Yep,
right?
that's at the end of May. Yeah.
Anything else? Because I'm just throwing that in because you got me to think about it.
No, I think as far as interviews, I don't have anything else lined up. Not yet.
Okay, great. And so now we're in the home stretch.
Home stretch.
What's
Cool.
the easiest way for people to get in touch with you? Is that going to be on Twitter?
Yeah, I think tagging me on Twitter is great. Just don't tag me a million times. I don't like waking up to a bunch of notifications. But no, I have a Discord community that I help run for a lovely bunch of people, and it's pretty active. We've got about 400 people there now. I would say there's probably always like 50 people online or like lurking about. So it's pretty cool. We do have our own PKD channel on there where people ask a lot of questions and stuff. So if you wanted more like N=1 help figuring stuff out, we do like kind of try to help people with that too.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely include your Twitter handle below. Did you
Cool.
want me to include the link to the Discord?
Yeah,
as well?
I'll give you a link to the Discord.
Okay, great. And is there anything you wanted to discuss that we haven't already covered?
I think we covered everything that I wanted to discuss. I think there was one more question. Yes, a blogger podcast. That one.
Yeah, that's the last one, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's all I wanted to discuss.
Okay. So that you got that on hold,
Yeah.
and this is the final one where we let you say farewell to the audience, and wrap up in whatever way you want to. But along the way, please mention a favorite book, blog, podcast, or presentation that has changed your thinking about nutrition or fitness in the past month or so.
So I would say there's this particular individual that has changed my thinking a lot throughout my 2 years and has been a really good friend and confidant for me, and that's Amber O'Hearn. And she just had a fantastic podcast on Nourish Balance, and
Okay.
she kind of goes into metabolic water, which is I think going to be fascinating, and kind of talking about the insulin to glucagon ratio maybe being skewed by protein. So other than that, what really inspired me was her talk with some of her mental health, and decided that maybe I need to get out and start talking about my story. So.
Oh, okay. And since we are talking about your story in the context of a mukbang, do you have anything left on your plates that's worth showing?
No, it's just an empty bone. This is all I got left. So.
All right. Marrow is gone, folks. And so I definitely appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday evening to have this mukbang with us, Josh. And it's been a real delight for me. I have enjoyed following you on Twitter for months, and it's just been a pleasure for me to get to know you a little better. I'm looking forward to your future interviews, and I'm glad we could get the training wheels on, and you could have the sort of amateur hour here with Carnomad before you go big time in it with the big productions. And I think you're gonna smash it out of the park, because you have a fantastic story and a fantastic sensibility about you. And I'm a fan of Josh Blackburn on Twitter, and I think everyone else should be too. And so for now, on behalf of Josh Blackburn, this is Mike, the He of Carnomad, signing off from historic Carnomad Studios.